We're kicking off with Jacob Fatu, who reportedly suffered an injury at SummerSlam during a spot where he sent Cody Rhodes through the announce table. It's since been said that this injury was to keep Fatu and Roman Reigns apart at SummerSlam, as WWE doesn't want to rush into a collision between the two superstars. With Fatu missing from last week's SmackDown, there have been questions about the WWE Tag Team titles, which Fatu and Tama Tonga won on the SmackDown before SummerSlam. PW Insider reported that the tag team champions are determined by Solo Sikoa's selection, meaning Fatu, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa are all eligible to defend the titles. Although WWE has not clarified this on television, this is the internal explanation for the situation, and this is a take on the classic Freebird rule, named after the fabulous Freebirds. That rule allowed the Michael Hayes-led faction to permit any two members of a group to defend the tag team titles, and was often used to rile up fans. This is not the first time WWE has used this rule, as fans may remember that Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, a premier tag team in NXT, cut a path through the tag team division, becoming tag team champions in the process a few years ago. However, when Fish tore his ACL, Adam Cole stepped in to help defend the tag titles. Later, Roderick Strong joined the group, and he also filled in whenever injuries knocked out one of his stablemates. So even if Jacob Fatu won't be around in the near future, WWE can exploit the Freebirds rule and could generate more heat from fans, though it remains to be seen when he'll be back on TV. More from the Bloodline, as Roman Reigns has been going at it alone since returning at SummerSlam to wage war with the Bloodline, an act that saw him aid Cody Rhodes. In the closing minutes of SmackDown, the original Tribal Chief tried to reclaim his spot as the Tribal Chief, and tried to obtain the ceremonial Ula Fala from Solo Sikoa's faction. There was a moment before Reigns stood tall when Tama Tonga picked up the Ula Fala that had fallen in the ring and handed it over to Sikoa, though Tonga stared at the Ula Fala for a moment. This stare was similar to how Solo once had, and fans will remember that Sikoa's corruption came when he started having designs of becoming the leader of the Bloodline. Perhaps WWE planted the seeds for a future storyline between the Samoans and the Tongans, where Solo is betrayed by the Tonga brothers. There is no update yet on how WWE is planning to go about with the Roman Reigns vs Solo Sikoa rivalry in the coming weeks, though it's rumored to be Reigns vs Sikoa at Bash in Berlin. On the Not Sam Wrestling podcast, Sam Roberts predicted that Tama Tonga with Tonga Loa could part ways with the new Bloodline in the future. Roberts said, "I was wondering if Tama Tonga was trying to take it for himself. I saw the same thing. Tama Tonga was slow to give the Ula Fala to Solo Sikoa. It's always possible that the Tongans will split up with Sikoa." As to how Jacob Fatu fits into all of this, we've already reported that his injury angle was done to keep him away from a showdown with Roman Reigns. Fatu's unique appeal is something WWE is being very careful with, and are in no rush to put him against Reigns, who often requires opponents to sell extensively for him. On Wrestling Observer Radio, Brian Alvarez said the current focus is on Reigns and Sikoa, with Fatu expected to be introduced into the mix at a later stage. As we mentioned yesterday, as per PW Insider, Fatu is expected to return by the end of this month, so perhaps he'll get involved in the rumored Solo vs Reigns match in Berlin? But when do you think would be the right time for Fatu to collide with Reigns? Should he defeat Reigns to establish himself as a major heel considering his persona? Let us know in the comments section. Now, WWE is mere weeks away from its inaugural Bash in Berlin PLE, and right now, just 2 title matches have been announced for the Germany show. With that said, it's been reported that at least one surprise title change will be taking place, and that will see the World Tag Team Championships leave the Judgment Day. Since Jey Uso came to Raw in late 2023, he's been an ally of Sami Zayn, a nod to their days together in the Bloodline, and the pair have been at consistent odds with the Judgment Day. This feud includes 6 live event wins over JD McDonough and Dominik Mysterio, as well as 2 losses to Finn Balor and Damian Priest, though the latter is no longer with the group. On the July 22nd Raw, Sami and Jay defeated McDonough and Balor in a non-title match, and a rematch for the titles is expected to happen at Bash in Berlin. Pro Wrestling Finesse on X has indicated that the plan is for Uso and Zayn to leave Germany with the titles, but at this time, a title match has yet to be announced by WWE. Zayn and Uso have openly discussed how they are due a title shot for the recent victory over McDonough and Balor, and this could be what both faces need at this juncture. Uso did not work at SummerSlam, while Zayn lost the Intercontinental title to Braun Breaker, and the following night, the duo tried to hype each other up for potential title shots. This week's Raw saw Uso give Zayn another pep talk before his 2 out of 3 falls loss to Breaker. And what do you make of potential new World Tag Team Champions? Sound off down below. As we saw in this week's Raw, CM Punk laid into Drew McIntyre with his belt in a sign that the feud between the two former world champions is not over yet. Given the use of the belt, many are predicting that their next match will be a strap match, and according to Ibu of Wrestle Purists, that is the plan for Bash in Berlin. This will mark Punk's first PLE match overseas since the infamous All In 2023 debacle, and are you excited for this match coming to the Uber Arena? Sound off down in the comments. Over to NXT, which kicked off with Ethan Page, who boasted about finally putting down Oro Mensah in their NXT title match last week at the Great American Bash. Proclaiming his greatness, the All-Ego champion called this the NX Me era, and would have gone on had he not been interrupted by the familiar music of TNA Wrestling's Joe Hendry. Hendry was once again given a hero's welcome by the crowd, and he engaged in a verbal back and forth with Page as soon as he entered the ring. While the NXT champion acknowledged that fans and even wrestling legends believe in Joe Hendry, he said he's not among them and questions Hendry's credibility as a top name. Hendry fired back, naming Shawn Michaels and Booker T as among his supporters, in what must have been a surprise to the latter, who hasn't exactly been excited to see Hendry thus far. The Scottish star shared his sole purpose in NXT is to win the NXT Championship, and fans erupted in loud cheers as they anticipated a title match between the two. It was Ethan Page who had the last laugh, as an unhinged Wes Lee appeared from nowhere to drop Hendry with a super kick, but now the seeds have been planted for Page versus Hendry. Page versus Hendry was an inevitable match after the TNA star defeated Page and Shawn Spears in July alongside Trick Williams, and it's a good idea that will guarantee an invested crowd. It's always been unlikely that anyone from TNA will win NXT Gold, though Hendry would make the most sense, even with Lee's involvement, as he continues his rise as a new top heel. It'll be interesting to see how far he can rise with this brutal new character. And what are your thoughts on Hendry potentially challenging Ethan Page for the NXT title? Let us know below. Wes Lee was around to explain his betrayal of the Rascals last week, saying that it shocked the world, and even he was shocked by what happened. Lee explained that he believed that he and Wentz were going to win the tag titles last week, but Wentz let him down, and added that Wentz let him down 2 years ago. That was alluding to Wentz being released from WWE, and Lee said people felt sad for Zack, but not for him, stating people merely saw him as just a tag team guy. Refusing to be beaten, Lee dried his tears and picked himself up to become the greatest North American champion ever, and claimed he'd been the one who kept everything together in MSK. Lee said he's tired of being Zachary's caretaker, and justified his heel turn by claiming Wentz abandoned him and reunited with Trey Miguel while he broke his back to be a top star in NXT. Lee went on to say that Zack and Trey only came back for the WWE, not him, and issued a challenge for NXT No Mercy, and said he won't show any mercy to Wentz when they collide. Pete Dunne then came out and said he was impressed with Wes Lee, but Joe Hendry blindsided the Cardiac Kid, payback for earlier in the night, which led to a brawl. NXT GM Ava has announced a loaded #1 contenders triple threat match that will see Hendry, Wes Lee, and Pete Dunne face off, with the winner earning a title shot. That match will take place next week, and the winner will face Page at NXT No Mercy, and the All-Ego champion has not faced any of his 3 potential challengers in singles action before. This promo by Lee, however, effectively spoils that he won't be competing for the NXT title at No Mercy, now that the seeds have been planted for a showdown with Wentz at the event. One of the most questionable aspects of this promo was how Lee made it sound like working for TNA was a lesser role to working in NXT. While the Rascals may respond well, it came off as insulting to WWE's primary talent partner, and hardly what was needed in this already deeply personal feud. Over to Raw, and the stars were out at this week's show in Austin, Texas, as WWE made mention of Mark Henry and his son Jacob being there, as well as Candice Michelle. While these names were acknowledged, one WWE legend who wasn't showcased is Michelle McCool, who fans spotted in the front row during the CM Punk-Drew McIntyre brawl. McCool has been one of the top pioneers in the business who has significantly contributed to the success of the women's revolution, so it's odd that WWE didn't showcase her at Raw. Did you spot the former Women's and Divas Champion at Raw? And what do you make of WWE overlooking her despite acknowledging others? Let us know in the comments section. Over the past year, Dominik Mysterio has proven to be quite the ladies' man, as after being tied to Rhea Ripley for some time, he broke Ripley's heart to link up with Liv Morgan. That betrayal came at SummerSlam, though it's always worth mentioning that this is just part of the show, and in fact Mysterio is a happily married man. Dirty Dom and his wife have been sweethearts since high school and married over the past year, but what does she make to WWE's resident Lothario? On the Impulsive podcast, Mysterio revealed that his wife is totally fine with the on-screen romantic angles, as she knows there's a separation between work life and his home life. He said, "We've been together since we were 14, and we're 27 now. She's honestly the best. I do what I do on TV, and last week when Rhea licked my face, the first text I got from her was, 'There's a tarantula in our garage.' She gets it. She gets the split. She understands the difference from like when I'm on TV, I'm Dirty Dom, and I come home to her and I'm her husband Dominik. There's a huge difference as far as like when I come home too. So like I just want to rest, and she does a good job of separating work and real life and stuff." Dominik has a big support system at home and also spoke about having kids, but the couple are deciding to wait for the right time. Mysterio said they had played it smart by waiting until his wife graduated college before they got married and didn't get engaged until Dom's WWE deal was signed, sealed, and delivered. We'll have to see what happens next with Dominik's Loverboy ways on WWE TV, but no matter what, he will still have a wife at home who totally understands the difference between wrestling and reality. What do you make of Dominik's comments and his wife's reaction to his on-screen romances with Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan? Sound off in the comments section below. WWE traveled to Japan for 3 dates in July. Logan Paul was not part of the tour. Paul has a history in Japan, filming himself in the Aokigahara Forest, a notorious suicide site next to a suicide victim in 2017, and posting the footage on his YouTube channel. Logan Paul recently discussed the possibility of returning to Japan during a conversation on the Impulsive podcast. Paul, who did not participate in the WWE tour in Japan in July, addressed his controversial history in the country. During the episode, Dominik Mysterio questioned whether Paul could return to Japan, to which he replied, "Yes, I can go to Japan. I never said this before, but my rule was if I came back, I would like to be invited. I still haven't received the invitation." Paul suggested that his best chance of returning would be through WWE, stating, "My best bet is WWE. I would be a true heel there." He also expressed his appreciation for the country, describing Tokyo as the cleanest and most beautiful city in the world and his favorite city in the world. What's your take on Logan Paul and Japan? Do you think he should be invited back? Let us know what you think in the comments section. The Bloodline saga, which has been going strong for 4 years now, and now Paul Heyman has given a tease as to what to expect. Sitting down with Newsweek, Heyman addressed Roman Reigns' return in Cleveland and acknowledged that a new, exciting era of the Bloodline has only just begun. He said, "We are now in a new era of the Bloodline story with Roman Reigns as not the champion. How does he correct that? How does he take back the name of the tribal chief? Who is the head of the table, Solo or Roman Reigns? Jimmy's not here, Jay's not here, the wise man's not back yet. How does Roman Reigns deal with those on his own? Is this a revenge yard like an old spaghetti western where one man goes back, cleans up the village, and gets his revenge? Or is it a revenge yarn where he can't do it by himself even if he has to? What are the twists and turns that happen then? We have a long road ahead of us. All I can say is, for me, how I see the trajectory of it and the many ways we can go about it, it's going to be fascinating and will hopefully put our past 4 years of work to shame." That last comment is certainly quite the claim from Heyman, as the past 4 years have received praise from fans and those in the industry alike for its handling of Reigns and others. As a deleted photo from WWE.com has shown, Heyman was backstage at SummerSlam with Roman Reigns, though the wise man was nowhere to be seen on screen at the event. Speculation has been running rife about future plans for Reigns, such as when Heyman will return to TV, and will Roman recruit allies to take the fight to Sikoa's new bloodline. Those questions will hopefully be answered in due time, and if Heyman is to be believed, what we've already seen will pale in comparison to what's to come in this new era. But what do you think? Will Heyman's words be proven true in the coming months? Or is the wise man setting the bar too high? Give your predictions down in the comments. It was at Money in the Bank that John Cena declared he'll retire from the ring in 2025. Several wrestlers have put their names forward, and WWE is already considering opponents for John, including Intercontinental Champion Braun Breaker and World Heavyweight Champion Gunther. In a separate interview with Collider, John added that this tour will include around 36 dates and reiterated appearances at major events like the Royal Rumble, Raw on Netflix, and WrestleMania. Fans excited to see John, though, will have to wait, as Cena said that he will be committing 2025 fully to WWE, but he will be filming Peacemaker through to the end of 2024. Cena has also said that he wants to compete in the UK next year, and it remains to be seen how this tour plays out, as fans may not be mentally prepared to see the last of John in the ring. NXT saw Tony D'Angelo challenged by Charlie Dempsey, the son of William Regal, who was flanked by his no-quarter catch crew cohorts, including their new member, Ren Sinclair. D'Angelo had the members of his D'Angelo family in his corner for this match that came about when Sinclair won her match with Kendall Gray on last week's show. The NXT Heritage Cup match typically features 6 rounds with a 3-minute time limit and 20-second breaks between each round, and D'Angelo scored the first pinfall at the end of round 2. Dempsey evened the score in round 4 with some physical punches and words of motivation by his crew, and it was again Ren Sinclair who paid dividends on this night. As the clock ticked away in round 5, Sinclair knocked D'Angelo off the top rope, giving Dempsey the opening to drop him to the mat and score the pinfall to win back the NXT Heritage Cup. This marks Dempsey's second reign with the Cup, and he won it from the same man he lost the trophy to back in May, and this marks the end of a solid run with the Cup for Tony D'Angelo. Last week's teases with Oba Femi could be a sign he will shift his focus to a different championship after this loss. What matters most is to keep the Don relevant in NXT until there is an opening for him to get the main roster call-up, and that could see D'Angelo take on Oba Femi soon enough. On this week's Raw, Otis was on his way to the ring to face the Creed brothers when he saw Oba Femi at ringside, and the two men exchanged tense stares with one another. Shortly after, it was announced that Otis had answered Femi's open challenge for an NXT North American Championship match scheduled for this week's NXT. As the match began, both Otis and Femi showcased their strength in a hard-hitting contest, and fans rallied behind Otis as the overwhelming babyface. Otis sent Femi over the top rope to the floor, but the champion quickly regained control and would move out of the way of Otis's charge into the corner to deliver a punishing clothesline. That move would see Otis be sent outside the ring, where Akira Tozawa also faced the wrath of Femi, which only enraged Akira's Alpha Academy tag team partner. Otis tackled Femi and brought the fight to the outside, where he managed to get the fans behind him with his Caterpillar, but Femi kicked out of a pin attempt and hit a splash in the corner. In a decisive moment, Femi delivered a powerbomb in the center of the ring to secure a clean victory, marking Femi's 23rd straight victory since winning the North American title. The gold was won by Femi from Dragon Lee back in January, and it remains to be seen who will be next in line to face arguably the most dominant NXT North American champion in history. Over to AEW now, as Mina Shirakawa hasn't been seen in some time, but that will change with tonight's episode of AEW Dynamite. PW Insider reports that Shirakawa is scheduled to appear at this week's show, and with Mariah May also set to appear, it'll be interesting to see what unfolds as we get closer to All In. It was earlier this year that Becky Lynch's contract with WWE came to an end, and though many in the company expect her to return, that hasn't happened yet. While speaking on Games with Names, Becky Lynch was asked how she's been doing during her free agency and shared what's transpired since her final WWE match. She said, it's great, everything is great. I have my wonderful little family. I have many options on the table. I get to, for the first time in a long time, get to take a breath to appreciate everything. When you're on the road 52 weeks a year non-stop going from town to town to town, and in the last 3 years I added to the chaos by having a daughter who I would bring everywhere with me. On top of that, I decided it would be good to write my biography. For the last year or two it was pure chaos. Now I'm taking a little bit more time. I'm taking a breath, getting to look around the world, getting to look at what I created and evaluate everything. It's been wonderful. As a trailblazer in WWE and one of the company's top stars for years, Lynch has certainly earned some time off and is making the most of being able to spend time outside of the ring. Do you feel Becky Lynch will return to WWE eventually? When do you think she might come back? Let us know in the comments section below. We've got some sad news to report now, as Dennis Brent, who worked for years as part of both WCW and WWE, has passed away. Brent passed on August 11th of this year, and on social media, Jim Ross shared the sad news, saying that Brent had been a friend of his for 40 years. Brent started as a ringside photographer and worked his way up to head of publications in WCW and later WWE, and our condolences are with his family and friends at this sad time. During the Wyatt 6 arrival on Raw, Chad Gable was seen motionless and bleeding from the head, leading fans to joke that the Olympian had been killed by Uncle Howdy's faction. Speaking to Chris Van Vliet of Insight this week, Gable talked about being attacked and how the reaction from fans was huge for him to see. Gable even recalled being at church, thankfully very much alive, and a young fan being surprised to see he'd survived his encounter with the Wyatt 6. He said, "Yeah, that was quite a night. Out of everything I've done over the past couple of years, the response to that was so out of this world insane. People thought I was dead. I can't tell you the amount of people that thought something actually happened to me. I went to church that Sunday and ran into a little kid who was watching. I was kind of hiding my head from him, and he was like making his way around me to get a good look at my head, and he's like, 'Where did the wound go?' I'm like, 'Well, I fixed it, bud. I went to the hospital and stuff. It was bad.' And he's like, 'What did they do to you?' I'm like, 'You'll have to tune in tomorrow night.' They were into it. It was really interesting." The Wyatt 6 have been feuding with Chad Gable and the Creed brothers for the past few weeks as well, with the faction even beating Gable and his team last week. Time will tell how WWE will book their feud in the coming weeks, as fans clearly want to see much more of this angle, as well as much more from the Wyatt 6. In the main event of NXT, Nathan Frazier and Axiom looked unstoppable in NXT Tag Team title match with Chase U, but the resilient Ridge Holland hit Northern Grid on Axiom to win. Chase U rushed to the ring to celebrate Holland and Andre Chase's title victory, as confetti filled the arena after a fun main event with some admittedly awkward pacing. That was due to the limited time left for the main event, but the action was still tight, even if Chase and Duke Hudson had better chemistry than Chase and Holland. After a 3-week reign earlier this year, Chase U should hold the gold for much longer this time, while Frazier and Axiom should have made the main roster move a long time ago. NXT is clearly trying to build buzz on the road to the CW, but this title change felt sudden, though Chase U could not have handled taking yet another loss. The side effect of this is that Frazier and Axiom, who retained last week, lost the gold with a 1-week build, and this could have been built up for weeks, if not waiting for no mercy. Still, Holland proved himself to Chase U and finally brought gold to the university. It was a nice climax to his story as Chase U's newest recruit. What's your take on the NXT Tag Team division? Are the titles in the right team's possession? Let us know what you think in the comments section. In singles action, Izzi Dame's inconsistent push saw her defeat Brinley Reece, and she is someone who should be moving up the card soon. Lola Vice defeated Tatum Paxley, but the big story here was Wendy Chu ambushing Kalani Jordan at the commentary table and posing with the Women's North American title. Lexis King attacked Eddie Thorpe during the latter's entrance and defeated his adversary, and with one win each, expect a rubber match down the line on NXT.